Arguably unpopular, they said be out of touch with reality, and don't understand, right, maybe the way science and technology is going, right? And so oftentimes the church finds itself as a sign of contradiction. Well, if you're a practicing Catholic, right, or you're trying to be, sometimes that's a very good thing to be a sign of contradiction. So anyway, but the problem is that, especially in your generation, is the time for the technology and the engineering is increasing so fast, so rapidly, that it's difficult to understand what's going on right now. So Bishop Coleman said, all right, here's what we're going to do. In each of the high schools, let's see, we could take a religion person and teach them the science, and then they can teach bioethics. Or take a science person, teach them the religion, and they can teach bioethics. I guess everybody decided was either take a science person, teach them the religious part, right, the doctrine, right, and that's what we did. So I was chosen in my school in 2010, I was certified, right? In 2009, I started. It's a year-long process. It's through the National Catholic Bioethics Center. Yep, there's a National Catholic Bioethics Center in Pennsylvania. And I had to go down there for a week to listen to seminars. And then I'd come home and I had homework. Yes, I had homework, right? Every 2 weeks I had to be submitted and graded. We had to participate in phone training back and forth with the center. I had to go down there and sit on a panel with other bioethicists and understand what the real issues were that were coming into the center and why and how to solve those, how to give advice on that. I then had to do a paper. My paper was 28 pages on engineering the human genome. And then I had to defend that. It's like a master's thesis. And if you get to do all that, right, then you get certified. So I was certified in July of 2010. And so what that allows me to do is to teach bioethics, a bioethics class at our high school. Our bioethics is taught in our school mostly to seniors. And the reason for that is because it's some serious issues. And it's good for them to have the science background. And not only that, but it's where they're going right into. Either going to be voting, if they're not voting already, they will be soon, or they're going off to college, right? It's probably not going to be, maybe it'll be a Catholic college, but maybe not, right? And so that's kind of the right time for them to try to get an understanding about why the church has certain positions on certain things. What I like to do this, and I've done this seminar before for other confirmation classes, Catholic other confirmation classes, is because thank you for coming out tonight. I know it's difficult. I know you're all thinking about school tomorrow, right? You're ready to go back, right? It's difficult to come out tonight. But what I want to do, your time is valuable. So is mine, so is Mrs. Laird. Deacon's time is kind of valuable. Okay, sometime, right? Right, okay, and so your time is valuable, my time is valuable. So what I want to give you an idea tonight is why Catholics think the way they do. And then you can decide for yourself whether this is something you want to pursue or you're still interested in going through a confirmation. I have 8 kids. 7 went through confirmation. The other one's still working on it, I guess. Right. 8 kids go through confirmation. It's funny because I've talked to them about this stuff as their dad, right? Their mom and their dad, right? But sometimes later on, when they're 25, 30, yes, I have 25, 30-year-olds, right? I'll say, why didn't you explain this to us before? I said, I did explain it. You weren't listening, right? And so anyway, so that's what we want to give you a good idea for you tonight about why we think the way we do. Okay. When I say to my seniors, I say to them, I'm not trying to evangelize you. I'm not trying to convert you. I'm not trying to get you to think like a Catholic. I'm trying to get you to understand why we think the way we do. Because you're going to make that decision for yourself. Okay? All right. Let's see. Okay. And right. As Ashley knows, and some of you else have me, I don't start my classes off with a prayer. I teach marine science, and I teach AG biology, CT biology, honors biology, depending on what year it is, right? I don't start those classes off with prayer. Mr. Keevy, the head of school, gives us that option whether we want to do that. Okay. But I do start off every bioethics class with a prayer. And the reason I do that is because we are talking about life and death situations. We kind of get to those tonight, but we'll get to them next week. We have to make hard life and death decisions. Literally, who gets to live and who gets to die. Right? That's in your power now. Not so much in my generation, right? Maybe not Mrs. Laird's generation, but it is now. On yours, we have this power of life and death. And We're going to see some of that next week. Okay? And so I always start off with prayer. And the prayer is not for you, it's for me. It's for me. Because I'm praying, my prayer is that the words I say, right, are true, right, and just, in accordance with the teaching. So if you'll bless with me, please, and be with me in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for this time we have together. Open our hearts and our minds. Help us to understand the technologies, the decisions people have to make, the biology, the chemistry, the development, all the sciences. Help us to understand that so we can make decisions that are true, right, and just, and in accordance with the teachings of your Son, Jesus. I ask this for his glory, not mine. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So what I've done is I've just asked the words I say, because I'm just the conduit. Right? The teachings come from the church or from the Pope or from my confirmation teachers or my school or whatever, but they come through me, or from Jesus, they come through me to you. So all I'm praying for, right, is that I accurately and truthfully and justly give you the information you need to decide some of the things that you're going to have to decide. Okay, all right. There you go. That's why we're going to start with prayer. So only in bioethics do I do that. Right? Naturally, marine science, we just get going. Science, we don't bother with prayer. Okay, all right. All right, so we're going to give you a definition. No, there is no test on this. Right? So here's a definition. Bioethics is a code of moral beliefs, standards, or behaviors, okay, handed down from Jesus through the popes, about how we should act, right? Moral beliefs, standards, and behaviors, right? To ensure the inherent dignity and value of a human person is never compromised, right? No matter who they are, right? They're homeless, right? Or unborn, right? Or mentally or physically handicapped. We're using current emerging biotechnologies in biomedicine. Okay? And that can be anything from in vitro fertilization, to cloning, to genetic engineering. Right? So what the church is saying is, because there are other, if you go to a secular hospital, like Cape Cod Hospital, or Falmouth Hospital, they have a bioethics committee too. It's not a Catholic bioethics committee, right? But there are Catholics on it.
I just want to throw something in there.
Yes, sir.
I've been on both with Cape Cod and the Falmouth, and we talk about these issues all the time.
Right.
And what I do is I bring in the spiritual aspects to what usually is medical.
Right. Right. Beautiful. Right. Okay. And those are secular hospitals. So, like we have somebody like our deacons or our priests who are there to give their perspective on the sanctity of life and the dignity of the human person. If you're in a Catholic hospital, and Cape Cod Hospital are not Catholic hospitals, right, then their bioethics committee is more in tune, of course, with what the church wants. Right? And then some big distinctions if you end up in a Catholic hospital versus a secular. Okay, all right. Okay, could you simplify it? If I could. All right, Catholic bioethics is where you're trying to ensure that the dignity and value of all persons is protected from conception to natural death. And there's some key words in there, like conception and natural death, right? Those have block meanings in the city. All right, good. So because just because an act is technically possible, does that mean it's moral, right? So we can light off nuclear weapons, right? We can light off fusion bombs now, right? We can clone people. Yes, humans have been cloned. They never made it out of what they call the blastocyst stage, which is in a petri dish, right? But they have been cloned. Right? Now that blast has not been transplanted into a uterus and then the baby born yet, so we don't have 18 Tom Brady's around. No, right? But we have cloned human beings a couple of times. And we freeze them too. We can freeze human embryos too. We can cryopreserve them, freeze them, and then thaw them out, right? And implant them, right? And then they can, and may be born. Right? So just because an act is technically possible, does that mean the act is moral? Just because the act is legal, does that mean it's just? Capital punishment is still legal in a lot of states. Does that mean it's just? Or abortion is legal in all 50 states. But does that mean it's just? Right? And euthanasia, or physician-assisted suicide, is legal in 5 states in certain different incarnations. Right? But does that mean it's just? And so we have to be careful here, right? So just because, and that's one reason why Catholics find themselves at odds, because it may be possible, technically possible, and maybe legal, right? But we have we have objections to it. Okay? So Thomas Aquinas said in the 13th century said, it's very simple, the first principle, right? And that's good as to be pursued, even to be avoided. So I looked to see what a picture of him. I found that one. And that one didn't look too good. I found that one. That didn't look too good either. And then I found this one, looked like Sean Connery, so I don't know what he looked like, but anyway. All right, so that's kind of what we're aiming for, right? We want good to pursue, evils to be avoided. But how do we know what is good? How do we know just because an act is technically possible is that act moral, and just because it's legal is the act just? And so we need this solid moral foundation to stand on. That's what your Catholic faith gives you. It's going to give you that foundation to stand on so you know how to make these decisions. Right? Okay, let's take a look here. Right? And so we use a lighthouse as an analogy. That'll be you, the lighthouse. Okay? That's going to be all the moral issues that are going to be hitting you. Right? Right now you're kind of sheltered environment. Right? You're in home and school. Right? But you're going to leave that very soon. Very soon. And when you do, right, welcome to the big boy and girl world, right, you're going to be running into things, issues that you're going to have to decide on. Your Catholicity, is that right, Catholicity, right, means you should, you're compelled to be involved in the democratic process. Right? You have a rare opportunity growing up in the United States, right? You can vote. Right? You can, even though things may not go your way, you have a say in how things happen, how they turn out, right? And you're compelled to do that, right? You can't go crawl in your hole down in Dad's basement, play video games all day, right? No, you can't do that. You got to get out. You got to get involved. You got to be alert, active, aware of what's going on. Okay, right? So we need that foundation. Right? If you say, okay, I want to be alert, active, and aware, and I want to have a say, but I just don't understand, right? What the science is, or what the issues are. And I don't know where my foundation is. Okay. And so as Father Tapacholchik said, he was a mentor of mine, he said, anybody can spout an opinion. That's easy. Right? That's easy. But do you know why you think that? And are you sure that's a just and reasonable position that you're taking? All right, so take an example. You need to decide on a vehicle. What are your foundational requirements for transportation? Do you need something that can pull a lot of cars? Do you need something that can carry a lot of weight? Do you need something that goes fast and can fly? Do you need something that can carry a lot of people, right? Do you need something that goes fast around the track, right? Maybe you don't need any of those, but you don't want to be reactive. You don't want to base your decision based on feeling and emotion, right? And you don't decide just on what's popular. You don't just want to spout an opinion, right? Because you may just need a bicycle. So when you're looking at a vehicle that you need, right, you don't want to be reactive and say, oh, that's a good one, I'll think I'll buy that one, right? You don't want to base it on feeling and emotion. I like that race car. Oh yeah, that'll look good, right? You want to drive it, right? And you don't want to do that just because something's popular, right? You want to think it through, right? You don't just want to spout an opinion. You have to have a reason, right? You know, what are my requirements? Right? It may just be all you need is a bicycle. Okay, same thing when you have a stance on a moral issue. Right? What is the foundational moral requirements? Again, right? Whether we're talking about abortion or cloning or how far to go with maintaining life, right? Or gay marriage or genetic engineering or in vitro fertilization or conception, artificial contraception. Right? You don't want to be reactive. Right? You don't want to be based on feeling and emotion. You don't want to be just because it's popular, right? You just don't want to spout opinion. Right? Okay, so you got to think these things through, right? And decide where you go. Otherwise, oh, I guess this is okay. I don't know. Everybody else says it is, so it must be. And so, as Catholics, we have a moral foundation to evaluate the morality of an issue. We have ways to do this. You're not alone. You don't just have to sit and think, well, I'm confused. I don't know. You have all these different messages, right? We have a place. That's one of the things about being Catholic is you get to stand on this foundation. Okay? All right. And so, what is this foundation made of? Basically, two things. One is the natural moral law, okay, and the other is humanity's spiritual uniqueness. Okay, so if you're trying to decide on whether you support abortion or not, right? You probably don't say, oh, okay, what is the natural moral law? What is humanity's spiritual uniqueness? But these two things are critical. They are the foundation to make that decision about abortion, or about contraception, or about physician-assisted suicide. So we're going to look at each of these tonight. We're going to take a look at it. Let's look at the natural moral law. Okay, the natural moral law is what we believe is God's will and intention for you and for all of humanity, and for all of creation. So we call it the natural moral law. We believe that this is the law, right, laid down by our Creator, our Designer, right, that says, right, this is the way I want it to be for you, and for all of creation. All right? Okay, it is, and that sounds very nice, but the law can be kind of tough because it's objective, and objective means that it doesn't care about your feelings or emotions. It's objective. It's what it is. Sorry if you feel bad about this, right? But too bad, right? It's objective. It's objective, okay? It's universal. It means it applies to all human beings, everybody. Doesn't matter if you're a Canton rice salesman, right? Or you're a New York stockbroker, or you're a student at JP2. Doesn't matter, right? It applies to all human beings. And also, guess what? It doesn't change with time. So the natural moral law has been the same ever since humanity's creation. Our species has been around about 220,000 years. Right? So it hasn't changed, and it won't change in the future either. Okay? All right, so it's objective, universal, and eternal. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to share a little video here from the Chronicles of Narnia. And Chronicles of Narnia was created by C.S. Lewis. It's 7 books. Of course, he wrote a lot of things. C.S. Lewis was died in the 1950s, early 1950s, but he was an atheist, and later converted to Christianity. Extremely intelligent, smart man. So what he did was he wrote a series of stories about how to explain Christianity. And he worked with J.R.R. Tolkien too. By the way, Tolkien was writing Lord of the Rings. He was writing Chronicles of Narnia. And so here's a scene where, listen if you catch about the natural moral law. They don't call it the natural moral law, but take a listen and see. See if you can pick up where it's referred to. Right? You know the story, right? Aslan's the lion and the witch and all that stuff, right? How we are unborn Jesse. Well, maybe not, sir. I'm also a technical coordinator at school, so you'd think I would know, right?
But it's not your equipment, so
Oh.
I'll give you an out.
I think I know where to plug it in. Thank you. Okay. Here. Remember this scene? You see this?
You have a traitor in your midst, Aslan.
His offense was not against you.
Have you forgotten the laws upon which Narnia was built?
Not cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
Then you will remember well that every traitor belongs to me. His blood is my property. Try to take him out. Do you really think that mere force will deny me my right? Little king. Aslan knows that unless I have blood as the law demands, all of Narnia will be overturned and perish in fire and water. That boy will die on the stone table. As is tradition. You dare not refuse me.
Enough. I shall talk with you alone. She has renounced her claim on the son of Adam's blood.
How do I know your promise will be kept?
All right, so what C.S. Lewis is there kind of obvious, right? Holding his obvious to you last time is Christ, is the Christ, right? He's ransoming or sanctioning himself, right, to save, Peter. Peter, thank you. Where's Peter? Oh.
I thought, what was it?
Ed, okay, see, Ed, right, okay. And so what C.S. Lewis is trying to show, right, was an allegory that's like the Christian tale of Jesus sanctioning himself, right? But there's a couple of neat lines in there about the natural moral law. And you can read C.S. Lewis and how he made the Chronicles of Narnia so you know what he was thinking about, right? And so the white word says you have a traitor and you must have you forgotten the law on which Narnia was built. If you've forgotten the law, the natural moral law that the world and the foundations created on, right? And let's see.
My name is Philip.
Sorry.
The witch has demanded a meeting with...
Okay, so, and then Aslan said, don't cite the deep magic to me. I was there when it was written, so I know what it is. I'm well aware what the law says. Right? You don't have to tell it to me. I know what the law says. Right? And she says, and then when Peter tries to scare her with a sword, right? She says, do you really think force, mere force, would change the natural moral law? That's what she's saying, right? Could change the law of the way Narnia is built, or the way the earth, the creation is built. Do you think force can do that? Not either Peter's sword or even the force of mighty nations can change what the law is, right? The law is what it is. And so she says, right, Aslan knows if I don't have Edmund's blood, right, as the law demands, then all of Narnia will perish in fire and water. You dare not refuse me. Even Aslan can't change the natural law. It is what it is, right? And it's objective. So yeah, we like to not, we like to save Edmund and save Aslan. We can't do that. The natural moral law, what foundations created on, right, has to be followed. And when we don't do that, we're going to see when we don't follow the natural moral law, right? Yeah, okay, all of creation doesn't perish in fire and water, but there is a price to pay. So when we think we're doing the right thing, or we think we're doing something good, but it's counter to the natural moral law, right, then we perish a little bit in fire and water. Okay? Or maybe a lot bit. Okay, so let's see. So the natural law is revealed to us as rational human beings with faith and reason. We have to have faith. We have to have faith that God has revealed to us these guidelines to follow the natural moral law. And that He's made us rational beings so that we can understand the natural law, understand what is reasonable, right, and just. Okay? All right. So is there how to follow the natural law for dummies? Okay, I have faith, or I have faith that our creator, our designer, wants us to follow this natural moral law. Okay, I have faith and I believe that that's true. And I'm rational and reasonable. I have a brain. So, okay, I think I'll know when it's reasonable, right, and just. But can you give me a manual? Something? Wouldn't that be easier? There is. It's here. Right? It's the Ten Commandments. You've had it your whole life. But you wouldn't be here now. It's the Ten Commandments. It's the corporal acts of mercy. It's the greatest commandment to love God and love one another. They're all there. They've been given to you your whole life. So there is a way to follow the natural moral law. Right? We've heard it your whole life going to Mass, right? Not off, right? Sometimes, right, during the gospel reading, right? You should not, right? Because you're getting the natural moral law. Okay? All right. Okay, and you can do a wordle on this, right? And make all the terms come together, but it comes down to it to love God and love one another. Okay, all right. So, what are some examples that are against the natural law? Okay, how about the strip mining of a mountain to get to the ore beneath it? It can't be what was intended, right? To wipe out this whole ecosystem, right? Or the ecosystems, right? To get the ore, to exploit the ore underneath it. I'm sure there's other ways to do it, right? But when you see something like this, you say, that can't be what a designer intended for his creation for that kind of destruction. Or how about overfishing a species to extinction? We should be good stewards, not exploiters, right? Good stewards of the creation. Right? I am sure a designer, a creator, did not want us to fish a species down to extinction so it's no longer exists, because it's not there for future generation. About slavery. I am sure a designer did not want us to enslave one another. That is against the natural moral law. Right? And of course, there's more slavery today in the sex slave trade than there was in the 1800s. So I am sure the natural moral law does not want us to enslave one another, right, either for sexual gratification, right, or for labor, right? I am sure this is against the natural moral law. Why? Because I have faith that God is telling me this, right, and I have reason to know this is unright, this is not just. Okay? Well, how about starving children, right? How about pornography? If you were an evil agent, call them whatever you will, right, intent on destroying humanity, wouldn't you pick, right, what is the conjugal act, the greatest act of love between a husband and wife, and turn that into something that objectifies that person? Because that's what pornography does. Pornography is not a victimless crime. It takes that person and objectifies that other person. It makes them a thing. Right? And so you take the sexual act, which would be between husband and wife, right, for the generation, for the unitive part that binds them together, and for the procreative part for children, you take that and you turn that into the exact opposite. And that's what a force of evil does. It takes that and makes that person a thing to you, an object, to be bought, sold, and used. And by the way, studies are coming out, guys, not too many guys here, that pornography at your age and earlier wires your brain, actively wires your brain to look at women that way. I mean, how evil can that be? So now you're 20, 25, 30 years old, and you think, right, because your brain is actively, so viewing pornography is active destruction, an active destructive act, right, in the wiring of your brain. Especially in males, not so much in females. Because males are sort of visual creatures rather than females. And so this is what's happening, right? You know they can't be right. Eve was taken from Adam's side to be his equal. And you're treating her as a thing, an object. Okay. Well, how about abortion? No matter where you stand, there can't be nothing more against the natural moral law for a mother to kill her unborn child. No animal does that. No other organism on the planet does that. Only humans do that. Kill their unborn child. You know something's wrong there. Something's not right. Oh, yeah, you can talk freedom of choice and all that, but the bottom line is, right, it's about as unnatural an act as I think you can ever think of. It's for a mom to kill her unborn child. Part of it. Okay, so the natural moral is universal, right? Okay. All right, so it's universal, it's objective, it's universal, it's eternal, right? Now, some actions are going to be categorically wrong. It doesn't matter what the consequences are. Some actions, some things that are done are going to be categorically wrong, no matter what the consequences are, because they come in the natural law. Some acts are intrinsically evil. They can never be made good. They can never be justified, because they come to the natural moral law. Good does not come from evil. Only evil can come from evil. It's not possible for good to come from violating the natural moral law. And as your mom always says, right, two wrongs don't make a right. No, two actions both come to the natural moral law cannot be made incompliant with the natural moral law. Okay, all right. Let's take a look at it. So we're going to look at two major moral methodologies. We go to college and you study philosophy, you get a whole list of them. Basically, they break down into these two big ones. Right? One is a consequential morality, right? And that's where whether an action is good or bad, right or wrong, depends on the consequences. So this kind of makes sense, right? okay, I guess if I make a decision, I guess it was a good decision if things came out right. I guess it was a bad decision if things came out wrong. So you're going to make a decision based on the consequences. So should I cheat on my math test tomorrow? Right? Well, let's see. If I do, let's see, then I'll get a good grade, my parents will be happy, so therefore it's okay, because the consequences are good. Mom and dad are happy. Okay, so consequently it must be a good thing to do. Right? Whereas categorical morality is the opposite. Right? The morality of action, whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, right, has nothing to do with the consequences. It's whether it follows the natural moral law. Okay? Doesn't matter what the consequences are. And so, example, cheating is wrong. Getting a good grade and getting your parents say it doesn't change this. It's never going to change that. Cheating is wrong. It's categorically wrong. And so you get this consequential morality, you get this categorical morality, and you kind of, all the time in your lives, right, you're all kind of pitting one against the other. And you kind of say, well, I guess that would be wrong, but the consequences will be good. And we're using this all the time. Consequential morality is being used all the time to justify some things in society that the church is very much against. Okay, all right. So you got this categorical type thing and this consequential type thing, right? So you end up with this, right? This is Machiavelli. The end always justifies the means. You hear that? The end justifies the means. So as long as the ends come out good, as long as they come out good, then it was okay to do whatever I did. And so you see this kind of thing where cheating becomes rampant, right? Here's one where they found a mastermind with the cheating scandal that hauling them up, what? Join Wall Street. Okay. On this one, what's our policy on honesty? He's got to check and see, right? Because it depends on the consequences. All right. And of course, what we do, we spend a lot of time on the dropping of the Hiroshima bomb in 1944, on Japan, on Hiroshima. Whether that was a good thing to do or not, was that a just action to do? And consequentially, it's good because it stopped the war. But categorically, right, we killed a lot of innocent men, women, and children. So that's still today. You go on websites today, it's still arguing back and forth. But it makes a good model to see to compare consequential versus categorical. Okay, all right. So I'm going to give you two cases here. And this is from Les Miserables, right? Okay, and I'm going to ask you, in which case of cases is Jean Valjean right to steal bread? Case number one. This is a table exercise, so be ready. Right? Case number one. He steals bread because he likes it. Case number two. He steals bread because he is starving to death. Case number three. He steals because he needs to feed his sister's children, his nieces and nephews. So what I'm going to ask you is, give you 2 minutes, right? In which case is Jean Valjean right to steal the bread? Come to a consensus at your table. Case 1, 2, or 3? No cases? All cases? Which combination? Okay. 2 minutes, go. So here are the cases up here. Just come to a consensus.
Everybody agreed with that? Yeah, like could he have gotten a job? Stealing is one of those weird things where you could argue that it's categorically wrong because you're taking it away from somebody else.
Is there any 15 seconds?
Right, Michelle, no, that's a good point. Michelle, no. I guess the question is what else can you do?
Okay, table leaders, have you got the numbers? Okay, all right, hold on to those numbers, okay? But just what the consensus is, okay? Now I'm going to show you another one, right? Yeah, see, this is a handout. They actually give my class a handout on this, right? And they work their way through. They have to write down and justify. You're spared, man, don't worry. All right. Okay, here's another that happens in Les Miserables, right? Good vision. Look what happens here.
I'm sorry to disturb you. Caught him! But I had my eye on this man. God! I'm very angry happened to your eye, Monsieur?
Did he tell you he was our guest last night?
Oh, yes. After we searched his knapsack and found all this silver, he claimed that you gave it to him.
Yes. Of course I gave him the silverware. But why didn't you take the candlesticks? That was very foolish. Madame Gillot, fetch the silver candlesticks. They're worth at least 2,000 francs. Why did you leave them? Hurry. Monsieur Valjean has to get going. He's lost a lot of time. Did you forget to take them?
Are you saying he told us the truth?
Of course. Thank you for bringing him back. I'm very relieved.
Release him!
You're really letting me go?
Didn't you understand that, Bishop?
Madame Gillot, offer these men some wine. They must be thirsty. Don't ever forget. You've promised to become a new man.
Promise? Why are you doing this?
Jean Valjean, my brother, you no longer belong to evil. With this silver, I bought your soul. I ransomed you from fear and hatred. And now I give you back to God.
So, the good bishop lies when Jean Valjean does not go back to jail. Right? He says, yes, of course I gave you the silverware. He says, you no longer belong to evil, I've ransomed your soul. So I have a question for you, right? And that question is this, right? We've got 1 minute. Did the good bishop do the right thing by deceiving the constables? Okay. Go!
So he lied.
Yes, and that's an easy one. That's a yes or a no.
Obviously he did the right thing, but he's still by the back.
Yes. If you went to jail, we have to get killed.
Yes. It seems like more consequential as opposed to categorical.
Okay, ready? Okay, let's take a look. So which case is a case of the Jean Valjean right to steal the bread? What do you think?
They said two.
2 or 3, okay. 2 or 3, mostly 3. How about you guys?
Same.
2 or 3? 2 and 3? Say 2 and 3, 2 and 3. Okay. So in which case, so you think in 2 and 3, right, he had a right to steal the bread. Okay. And so was the good bishop right to deceive the constables?
Yes. Yeah.
We don't. No? Mr. Hughes, what do you think? I'm not sure. Okay, all right. Okay, let's take a look at this. Stealing is the 10th commandment, number 7, right? And lying is 10th commandment, number 8, are against the natural moral law. They can never be right. It doesn't matter what the consequences are. So that's kind of harsh, isn't it? Right? Okay. So because, but remember, the natural law is objective, universal, and eternal. So they can never be made right. So the stealing is stealing. It's wrong. It can't be made right. And lying and deceiving the constables is wrong. It can't be made right. Okay, you say, God, that's a little tough, right? So the natural law leads us to a more categorical way of thinking. A more categorical way of thinking. It may not always be the best decision. What I mean by that is, what about love thy neighbor, give food to the hungry, forgive us our trespasses? All this can be applied to those two situations. And aren't those a greater good? Okay, so things can get a little fuzzy, right? Things get a little fuzzy. There is a way to balance these off. It's called the principle of double effect, which we spend about a week on. Right? You don't want to do that, right? Okay. But basically it says the principle of double effect applies when you have an intention to do good, feed the hungry kids, but you foresee an unintended consequence that you're going to have to steal bread. Right? I foresee it. I don't intend it, but I foresee that I'm going to have to break the glass, right, and get the bread, right? I see I'm going to do that, right? So you use the principle of double effect when you have an intended good, but you foresee an unintended, right, but a foreseeable, not bad or evil, right? And that's like lying, like lying to the constables, the good bishop, right? His intention was to save Jean Valjean's soul, a good intention. But he foresaw an unintended good that's going to have to lie to the constables. So if you're confused, you're saying that, well, which is better, categorical or consequential? Right? Well, the following natural law is going to lead us more toward a categorical way of thinking. Right? I picked these two because these are kind of tough. I don't think there's anybody here that wouldn't break the glass and steal the bread and feed starving children. But that doesn't make it right to steal. I don't think there's anybody here that will lie to the police or to the first responders. Right? But you may, in some case, you may do that, right? But that never makes it right. Right? It's still a wrong, and this is what the natural moral law does. Let's stand and say, okay, I know this is wrong. What are you going to do about it? Okay, let's look at it this way. Okay, so in the first case, it says, I sow, which is evil, so starving children could be fed. And the good bishop says, I lie, which is evil, to redeem and save Jean Valjean's soul. Okay? Yeah, so let's look at this one. Okay, so the good effect was feeding starving children. The source of that good, right, came from Jean Valjean's love, right, and caring for his sister's children. Right? It didn't come from stealing the bread. Stealing the bread was just a response that he used, right, to do that. Right? So the evil response is just stealing bread. Okay? You could say, you constantly say, wait a minute, good can never come from evil. But the evil of stealing the bread, wasn't that a good because the kids got fed or something like that? So isn't good coming from evil? No. The good came not from stealing the bread. The good came from inside him, right? His care and love for the children. The response, the stealing was just a response to that. Here, right, the good effect is redeeming his soul, right? The source of that is not the lying and the deceiving. It's the love the bishop has for his fellow man. Right? That lying and deceiving was just a response that he did, right? So just remember that there is no evil that can come from good. Don't get tricked into that. Sometimes we respond in an evil way in order to get a good effect, right? Okay? But that good effect can't come from the evil. If it does, then that's an amoral situation. Right? Okay? And we'll see maybe next week with something that happens. Okay, all right, so we got this categorical and this consequential way of thinking, right? And I think the first time I taught that, I think the class, a couple of kids in the class said, so which is right, which is correct? Right? That's what you're going to have to decide. That's what you're going to have to decide, whether it's consequential thing or categorical. But Catholic thinking is more categorical, leans to the categorical side, because you always want to categorically follow the natural moral law. If you're violating the natural moral law, watch out, because all of creation may, what you say, burn and drown in fire and water, right? Okay, that won't happen right away, but there is always a price to pay in society when you don't follow that natural moral law. Okay, all right, let's take a look. Okay, right, we have a special tool to follow the natural moral law. I'm going through this pretty quickly here. It's our conscience. We know what is good, right, and just, how to love one another, but we see an injustice. We know this, right? Our conscience tells us that. This is an interesting study from 2014, right, out of Times Magazine, that showed that babies, even at 1 year old, have concern for each other. So what they would do is they'd have a baby crying in one room, and the other baby was a year old, right, before a year old, would drop the toys and could toddle over and see what was the problem. Why is that other baby crying? Right? And they want to know, they're interested, they want to know what's going on. Why is that baby distressed? So your conscience leads you to follow the natural moral law. And it looks like you're born with it even as early as 1 year old. Okay, so we have faith that God has given us guidance to follow the natural law that is revealed to us by reason. We have the capacity to know what is reasonable, right, and just by observing the natural world. Science can help us here. A lot of times science pitted against religion. Right? But no, a lot of times science helps us because we begin to understand right? How the natural laws, how the natural world is put together, how creation is put together. This is Stephen Mayer, who's writing about, he's an intelligent designer, which means that he believes in evolution, as the Catholic Church is, by the way, believe in evolution. But he's saying there's more to evolution than what you're taught. You know, you're taught, oh, okay, you have natural selection, certain organisms fit their environment better, they're the ones that get reproduced, they pass down with the seventh modification, the gene, and then that organism gets one. Okay, fine, right? That all works, but it can't be the only answer. There's too much information come from other places. So he's an information theorist, right? And he's a whole new movement here on trying to understand what's happening, how animals evolve, natural selection, and Darwin's mechanism just won't do it. Right? It works, it does it, but it won't get us to where we need to go. So he's studying evolutionary theory and information theory, right? It's kind of some neat stuff here. Okay. Dr. Capuzzo was the first woman senior scientist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and is a practicing faculty. Mildred Jefferson was the first black woman to graduate Harvard Medical School, and was very much a practicing Christian. And Francis Collins, who was the author of the Human Genome Project. That means taking all the human chromosomes and figuring out where the genes are, right? He headed that up for the government, right? He was an atheist too, by the way. He was an atheist when he went into that project and came out and said, wait a minute, okay, these genes go here, this works here, this goes over here, and he got all these mapped out. He said, this is no accident. This is design, this is intended. Somebody, some engineer put this together. This doesn't happen by accident. And so, when he finished, he wrote a book called The Language of God. Well, you know Watson and Crick, right? The DNA guys. James Watson, Francis Crick. James Watson's still alive. He's up at Bar Harbor in Maine. Francis Crick died, though, quite a while ago. And Francis Crick, when he understood the way DNA works, and transcriptions and translations, the proteins that come off the genes, right, okay? He kind of figured that out, too. And as he died, he said, I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in God. But there's no way this was not put together by something, some intelligent presence. And so therefore, he came up with the alien hypothesis, that the Earth was seeded, right, by DNA from some alien source. Because he just, in his brain, he couldn't make that connection, right? I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God. But somebody put this together, this is no accident. Must have been aliens. That's how, so, well, he's dead, so he must know by now. Okay, all right. Oh yeah, Francis Crick said, faith is not the opposite of reason. Religion is not the opposite of science. They help each other. Okay, and so we said there were two things, right? There was the natural moral law, and then you had spiritual uniqueness. So let's, did they get a break? No, keep going?
There's just no break embedded.
Oh, I can't. Okay. All right, so so I explained to you about the natural law. Hopefully you should think about this yourself, right? Think about, is there a natural law? Does it exist? Or things just randomly have to work together? I use the sciences. Look at evolution, look at ecology, right? Look at genetics, right? You're studying in school. Look at biochemistry. Some of this stuff that we're finding out is just bizarre. It'll just blow you away, right? The way it works. These little nano machines that we're finding inside the cell. You have 50 trillion cells as an adult. 50 trillion cells. Inside each cell, these little nano machines that are doing all kinds of stuff that we never knew about before. And so there's too much information. Information's coming from somewhere that we don't know. Developmental biology, right? You are a zygote when you're one cell. Right? Your dad's fertilized your mother's egg, right? That you were one cell at one time. In that one cell, there's not enough hydrogen ions, hydrogen atoms, right, to contain the information you need to build a human being from. You say, what that means is that information is coming from the outside. This is a new part of developmental biology and embryology. There isn't enough stuff inside a single cell to build you. Not only is it building you, but it's building the reproductive structures so that that the population can, that the species can perpetuate itself. It just blows you away. And so now they're saying that the information has to be coming from somewhere. It's somewhere else. We don't quite know. It's not all in the DNA. It's not all. So this is just fascinating stuff. But anyway, okay. All right, so that's the natural moral law. Look at the sciences and see, you can see where this is happening, right? Where you can see the natural moral law. Okay, and we want to talk about now the second major part of that foundation. So we think there's a natural moral law. We think there's an order, intention, and design to the universe. what about you? Where do you fit in? Right? That has to deal with our uniqueness, our spiritual uniqueness. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about atheism. There's a thing called scientific atheism. It's the attempt to prove that human beings are merely, you gotta like this, meat in motion. We have no free will, we have no souls. Morality and religion are simply evolutionary artifacts programmed by our genes for survival. We are just matter and energy interacting with the environment. Now, if you tend to think like this, right, that's not going to make any sense to you about thinking that we are spiritually unique, that we are made unique. Right? So we need to look at this, right, to look at the extreme, because certainly you're going to run into atheists if you already have. Right? But maybe you yourself are thinking, man, they make me go to CCT, and they make me go to confirmation. I don't believe any of this stuff. I would say this, if you don't believe any of this, then you're not looking. You're not looking. Right? Okay, but this is what atheists believe. Okay? They believe, right, this is the hand of God touching, right, they believe it's more like maybe an alien or something, maybe touched man and gave DNA or cells or something like that. Right? Here, there's two mathematicians trying to figure something out. And right here, they can't figure it out, say, well, a miracle occurs. There's some great conflicts in astrophysics. Great conflict. I don't understand, right? I don't understand. But Einstein's theory of relativity works, right? And then the way molecules and atoms fit together works, but the two don't fit together, right? So it's some kind of grand theory that astrophysicists are trying to figure out, right? And we're just kind of finding this out that, gee, does this work this way or that way in the universe? Well, there's more dark matter than real matter. So. Anyway, okay, so atheists' views on religion. And you see for yourself, do you think like this? Maybe you do. Maybe you do, right? Religion discourages independent thought. So atheists are free thinkers. They're not burdened by having to think, oh, God made me, and He loves me, and if I die, I go to heaven, it's good. Right? They're not burdened by that. They're free thinkers. You don't have to worry about that. They do what they think they ought to believe. Okay? It's divisive and dangerous. They think religion is divisive and dangerous. Well, okay, if you look at history, or even today, right, what's happening in our world today, religion has always been divisive and dangerous. That's true. It's going to be hard to